So foolish. Good artists don't have lives anymore. Their life is reduced to telling stories that others can believe are their own. So foolish. He was thinking a lot about John Cage. You could say in a way that was similar to the way Octavio Paz thought about Marcel Duchamp. Specifically when Cage told Joan Retallack, "We can't keep our sight local to achieve a glimmer of utopia." Then he told her something that might have revealed that he was in the middle of a systems change. The sum of my impression after being mugged the other day was, how is it that I could be so foolish to be optimistic? John Cage died a few weeks later, struggling to keep the Cagean agenda going. The author was deeply moved by that and decided to collect these stories that might account for more than just optimism, finally rejecting both optimism and pessimism. So wunderbar. Her name was Karuna, and she was taking her first walk in the neighborhood. She had on an adorable little dress that floated in the summer breeze, with sweet matching sneakers. As she came to each flower along the way, she exclaimed in ecstasy, "How beautiful, so beautiful." Looking at a leaf, she saw that thing that is alive in that leaf. The walk took an eternity. So beautiful. Yes, her German companion reiterated, so wonderful. She watched the red light turn from red to green. So wunderbar. So wunderbar. So wunderbar. So wunderbar. Intake. A mother was found force-feeding her 3-year-old child, who was bloody and screaming. Cursing, she threatened to cut the child into 100 pieces if it did not eat. They brought the mother to intake. She had no teeth and a dazed, wild look in her eyes. She calmly said to the caseworker, "It wouldn't eat." The Chinese Princess. A group of artists had assembled at a Chinese restaurant just above San Francisco's North Beach area at the corner of McAllister, when all of a sudden a taxi came to a screeching halt. Out hopped an infuriated Chinese princess. She had white taffeta wings, an exotic headdress with a little bejeweled tutu, and shiny tight sequin stockings. Her face was painted in a myriad of floral shades. She was throwing money on the ground and screaming at the driver. She made her way into the restaurant to the amazement of the young artists. She composed herself, sat down, and ordered 2 dinners, obviously expecting company. She became more and more agitated as it became apparent that her companion was not coming. She began sobbing uncontrollably and making a scene with the waitress, yelling at her in Chinese. Pulling out a wad of $100 bills, she threw smaller denominations on the floor, exclaiming in English, "You pick it up." The scene accelerated into panic as the tears running down her face made her makeup wear off, clearly revealing the face of a man. The anxious looks in the eyes of the patrons made one wonder, did she have a gun? The management came out threatening to call the police, enraging her further. She refused to pay the bill. As she made her way to the door, now followed by the cooks, she threw single-dollar bills on the floor, which they picked up. Once outside the doorway, they burst into a chorus of invective in Chinese, screaming at each other, the cooks now waving knives. She continued to pay the bill dollar by dollar on the sidewalk, but now, outnumbered and intimidated by the knives, this unrequited Turandot vanished into the night. The bus driver. The stone-faced Japanese bus driver who had survived Hiroshima as a child was driving a standing-room-only crowd of young students who were out partying on a Friday night, singing songs and telling each other jokes in a riot of inane happiness. Several students, perhaps enjoying themselves too much to remember where their stop was, pulled the cord too late for the driver to stop. The animated crowd went completely silent as the bus drove on. The students, fearing they would have a long walk in the rain, watched the driver as he circled around the block to the last missed stop. The bus driver, looking up in the mirror, said in a soft but firm voice, "Next time, pay attention." The students' joviality returned as they scampered off, saying, "Thank you." The tourists. On top of the world, the view from the Gran Sasso Mountains in the Abruzzi was an adventure that explained everything to some travelers the locals called the Grandi Turisti. 2 hours from Rome, it seemed like the Middle Ages. It was a far cry from the exhibit at the Villa Borghese, showing Francis Bacon's paintings juxtaposed with Caravaggio, and an eternity from Florence, where they had just seen at the Uffizi Robert Mapplethorpe's black nudes under every sculpture of Michelangelo. From that view they had an insight to another view, surrounded by the dreaded padrones. They squeezed everything out of you until you were forced to emigrate. They told the tourists stories of how, when the last bus stopped at Montorio al Vomano, you had to walk the 12 kilometers to get to the top of the world. blown to the wind with no scooty. You found dangerous work in Belgian mines before emigrating again to Canada or the U.S., where working at the New York Central Railroad you lost your arm with no recompense, and returned to the mines, this time with a strap on your good arm, to dig coal and raise 9 children. Epic, heroic lives. L'avventura to these conserving people meant the conservative was the enemy. The Romans had a hard time with them, and the Vatican seemed very far off. Indeed. Encounter. A young musician got his first union card to perform on the Celesta in a legendary Battle of the Bands marathon. It was March 17, 1970, and the Grateful Dead, the Buffalo Philharmonic, and John Cage were all on the same program with Lucas Foss. The young Celesta player played in several sets with the Dead and Foss. When it came to the premiere of Cage's Variations 3, the young musician could not understand why one anarchist had to obey the rules of another anarchist. He turned the performance into a kind of Celesta concerto, thereby almost sabotaging Variations 3 until one of the musicians stopped him. The voice of Cage went on lecturing. After the performance, it was reported that Cage laughed, remarking, "It was like some kind of crazy bird got let loose." Lost in the vastness of the rock audience, the laser light show, and the smoke, the young Celesta anarchist disappeared into the night. Bologna. A foreign woman was walking down the Via Stalingrado to catch a bus. While thinking about the paradox of Bologna, she veered off to the main piazza on her leisurely stroll, overwhelmed by the spectacle of a bustling chocolate convention that was across from where the hundreds of photos were mounted of dead partisans the Nazis had shot. She noticed a fountain with a sculpture of a nude woman with water spurting out of all her openings. She was ruminating that this must have been the last image these resistance fighters saw on Earth, when suddenly a large public bus pulled up with a huge black sign on its side that had 4 white statements, each with a box at its side. The statements read, heterosexual, homosexual, metrosexual, non importante. The last box was marked with a bold red check. The bus pulled away without her. Water report. A water quality scientist who was moonlighting in the health field at a natural medicine store was trying to make interdisciplinary connections in his research. He was investigating Japanese water imaging and this summer's anomalous barometric pressure changes. This was the same summer that had extraordinary ozone warning days, record levels of extreme allergic reactions among his clients, and severe tree and weed allergies. The trees especially were in overdrive for having the highest reactions to their pollens on record. His thesis was that people who were allergic to things were the Earth's antennae to catastrophic climate change. The Earth was sick, he said, from all this furious industry of a certain kind of people, wedded to a becoming society. The being cultures, as he put it, were dying out, and the Earth was suffering from this so what, dust to dust attitude. The scientist reported to his client, who only came into the store for some supplements, that all this resulted in a wave of eustachian tube dysfunction with patients who then came to the store for herbal medicines. He noticed too the extra high levels of depressed people all over the world and told his client he had to be extra careful in this matter. After his lecture on water purity at an international conference he attended, he noticed in his discussions a number of Japanese scientists who knew exactly what was going on with the Earth. But everybody agreed the information could not be released to the media for fear of waves of mass suicides. In fact, it was his opinion that the last president was right in hiring some so-called prominent nuclear physicists who know nothing about climatology, i.e. the wrong kind of experts, to deceive a public that was all too willing to be deceived on the subject of global warming. After all, he said, for a nation that knows absolutely nothing about the Middle Ages, it's unthinkable. The playground must go on. Right meditation. Kriyan. Chronos. Krotan. Gaia. Uranus. Janus. Linus. Scipio. Karuna. Lakshmi. Vishnu. Atman. As light and shadow are in one, neither optimistic nor pessimistic, only aware of the surroundings, in a mindful, watchful state. Through these stories, he became thoroughly aware of the universe.